Hi, welcome to BSVP On Site Biz. We're talking today with Schy Gleason, producer, director, and all-time wonderful guy. So let's get into the show.
Oh, hi, Bruce.
Intro. Quick intro.
I do.
So,
and by the way, my spelling of my name is so bizarre. It's actually short for Skylar. So as you introduced me as Schy has been so appropriate because my entire life, since third grade, the teacher and Shyler, it's actually pronounced Sky. Just so you know, you said
I said
Schy.
Schy?
You did, but you are
Okay.
not alone.
No,
my whole life. So you welcomed me well. Thank you.
So it is Sky, and
Yeah,
so
it
I need
is.
to actually change the name. So we're talking about digital marketing and how to get your name out there and how to get your content out there. And you covered that both from a film standpoint as well as a business standpoint. And your latest project is called Mad in the Kitchen, which is a live stream series cooking show that is highly entertaining and also
Well, hopefully informational, profitable in the sense of the human. I was told the other day there's 3 different elements of hardware, software, and then I was introduced to the word called wetware. And that is the human component. And to me, that's critical and key because we are creating relationships. And the miracle of our experience is that we have people from physically around the world participating in this current 8-week series of a show that's in beta. It really is because we are working with a 30-year veteran. The woman that started The Daily Show, Madeline Smithberg, did a pivot in her life and was always in love with food, but was given the opportunity a year ago to do a show. And consequently, when she wasn't doing a show, it was just she was going stir crazy on her couch and handed her iPhone to her husband and said, "Here, we're going to do a YouTube thing." And then I observed that, and I knew her because of the work that I had done with her with the Graham Care Project, the Galloping Gourmet film that I'm working on. And so I kind of stepped into that and said, "Hey, can I come along and edit?" And then I said, "Hey, can I come along and bring some more cameras and microphones?" And then all of a sudden, a year later, now we've probably got 100 people that are on this journey, and it has turned into quite a miracle, quite amazing, fun journey of what's the 2 buzzwords that we're using is the 2 goals. It's fun and delicious.
There you go. And I think that we met almost in the same venue because I dropped in on this series led by Alex Lindsay called Office Hours. And I've been watching the show for a number of weeks and then decided just to go live one day. And there was a day you asked for help on StreamYard. And I've been streaming for a while.
You came in and were a part of the original concepts of doing something live. And yes, StreamYard was our original platform because that gave us all of the flexibility we needed with the budget that we didn't have, and we still don't. The sponsors are physically the audience. The sponsors are physically the Stone Soup story. If you're not familiar with that, go look that up. And that we don't want to go too deep into that, but everybody bringing what they have to the experience, and then it all just is so much better. And it's very communal in that sense of sharing a fun experience together. So that's kind of my mandate. If you're gonna be a part of the party, you need to take some fun home with you.
And so the show has actually expanded quite a bit. She's actually had been on network broadcast TV on Today's Show a few times.
3.
And
we're
3 times. Yep. And so actually, how did that come about? How did she get the booking on Today's Show?
Well, because she, of course, is her heritage. Madeline Smithberg is who the she we're talking about. Madeline Smithberg is a force of nature in and of herself. But she's been in the industry, starting in New York at the Daily Show. Sorry, at the David Letterman show as a human interest producer, and her job was to find these unique people to bring into the show. And so she did that for quite a number of years. And then I should let her tell her story, but I've heard her story a number of times.
Yep.
And then her relationships in New York continued and expanded. And then the opportunity to do the Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And so she started that and was a showrunner even before the term was that. And so her contacts in the industry are broad and deep, and she's an Emmy and a Peabody Award winner. So she's been acknowledged by her peers as the talent that she is, and the force of nature that she is was the fun part of now that she is allowed to also help others learn how to cook. And so she's discovering, along with all of the rest of us, all these different dishes from physically around the world, because we can do that on the internet now. And you were a big part of that success early on in helping us bring in these other chefs from around the world.
And so here is a clip that she was on. Let's see, on the Today Show.
There it is.
See if I can expand that out so we don't get all that technical.
I don't know. I like that technical. 170K.
Yeah,
what does that mean?
That is, I think, the total. Yeah, I think that was how many shows there. So here is the setup they had, and she was.
Go back.
You shot this. Go ahead.
Well, here's the fascinating part about being okay. Those are almost the only two people in the studio. Everybody is physically, I think maybe there's one other technology or technician in the studio, but I think that's not a green screen. That is probably a big projection or a big monitor of some kind. But all of the humans at 30 Rock are somewhere in their apartment dialing in. I think there was maybe 2 or 3 other people other than the talent on that set. And so consequently, we were talking to our producer, and we were doing all of this to NBC over iPhones on FaceTime. And that's because they do so much content. They don't have time to deal with all of this other cool technology, but to train people to do, multiple cameras, blah, blah, blah. They just want good content to come in and as reliable as they can get it. And at this point, we've been on 3 times, each time using 2 different iPhones. And our job is to do the dress on the set, do the performance. And again, yeah, there you go. This is second. And so you can see in the bottom left-hand corner over there where you're just now clicking, that's the other camera. I don't know what it is down there, how they're doing it. But we do have we put a grid. We put a light grid in.
I'm sorry, is this your cameras or is this provided by the studio?
Nothing's provided by anybody. We bring all of that. All of that you see is us. There's no big truck. There's no big producer. There's no big people flying in from New York. We dress the set. Madeline prepares the recipe. She works it through with the NBC producer. In fact, the Christmas show, we ended up doing matzo balls because we were going to do lamb, and they said, no, we already have somebody doing lamb. So literally in the last minute, Madeline's, how about matzo balls? And so the most recent time. So yeah, our job is to make sure whatever we're producing looks and sounds and looks good, and we've got good, clear connection. Madeline's job as the talent is to make it interesting and if not entertaining, or hopefully entertaining if not interesting.
Great, because this is really fascinating. Is the fact that she's expanded this, basically it's a YouTube show, into a series, and is taking and you don't need to have the backing of a big studio or a big TV station to do this anymore.
I work on a principle of, you remember that thing you used to see at the mechanics, the poster up on the wall is time, quality, and money choose two. Well, I took that concept and I thought, no, that's really the production model of anything, in that you need the quality level expectation, then you need the time to create it, and then the money. I've turned that phrase into resources, because what we're doing now is kind of magical, but we still haven't really done it with any money. But we have tons of amazing resources because of the human, the wetware factor that I mentioned earlier, because of the human interactive component. And so that's where relations are very critical to me, and versus just transactional, which is, I pay you and you do a thing and go away. But to where you were going, or where I was trying to go with your question, is you don't need all of that equipment, but it sure helps. I mean, we don't need money. I mean, we don't want money, but we need it occasionally. So it's a weird, weird tightrope. And so to that point, do you need $100,000 camera? Do you need a fiber pipe? Do you need a $10,000 light? Well, I don't know if you need it, but if you're going to use it repetitively, HDMI is not an industrial strength plug. They wear out quickly, but they're a commodity that anybody can now, put into a piece of equipment and everybody can have. So it's a weird dance, because I come from the professional world and I'm kind of now in the civilian environment. And here's the awkward thing. And I don't know how to say this without, hopefully I don't offend anybody, but when you do it every day for a living, you want equipment to come back to the next day, right? I mean, you do this a lot, right? And you've worked in, how do I say this? You see, to say the word professional, like
you want durable equipment.
There you go.
Then again, if you take care of your phones don't break. And in the beginning, you were doing shows where the guest came in with an iPhone and a laptop. Or maybe even two, and an iPad, and that was a 3-camera shoot on their end, and then you were able to switch between those.
Well, actually, you were able to switch between those, but we won't talk about that. But and that's why I've been calling all of this last 8 months kind of an experiment. And I heard the great word of, as a startup company, we're doing a lot of things in beta, because we are taking the next new tools, which again in Moore's law, the price of things will cut by half, and the processing speed will double. Of course, we've already surpassed that, 5 years ago now, that whole theory. And consequently, the iPhone 12 is an amazing piece of equipment. I mean, what would Ansel Adams have done with an iPhone 12? I can't even imagine. He was shooting with not a box brownie, but it wasn't much more.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the original cameras that they had in the studio, where they had a close-up lens, a medium lens, and a far lens, and they would actually switch between them, cutting between 3 different lenses. Now you have it all on your phone.
Have you heard that joke about the original telephoto is your legs, because you're physically moving closer and further away from the subject? Like,
in the industry we call it a dolly shot, or
you can, or a jib.
And again, a lot of people, and I've seen some of people who have the older version of the phone who only have the one lens. They would stand 20 feet away from the camera and shoot for
such a first world problem. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's just.
And then also, one of the things that we were talking about before the show is the microphones, and you're using remote microphones, because you actually, when you do something like this, you can actually use your wireless.
You can, earbud. And it's like any subtlety of experience. If all you know is a certain thing, for instance, we are very accustomed to 24 frames a second in film, because that's what we grew up with. And that is where John Wayne and Jerry Lewis and these people touched us, whether it's comedy or drama. And consequently, when we see 24 frames a second in film, that's what we are accustomed to, and that's what we're used to. In China, from what I understand, Dolby at one point was putting in physically thousands of theaters a year, and they were prepping it for, I think, 120 frames a second, because they could.
Mm-hmm.
Technology had changed. Now, a few years ago, we saw one of the Lord of the Rings films that was shot in 48 frames a second, and it was delivered in the theaters at that higher frame rate, which gave it a much more crisp and much more sharp, almost a video game like quality. And those of us that grew up with a certain style of the 24 frames a second, and again, historically, you can look up that and why it was 24, because that's persistence of illusion, and it was just cheaper because film used to be made of physical silver, and so it was expensive to do more than that. They wanted to do more, but it just got really expensive. Well, digital changed all of that. Now, consequently, in China, the ethos, the zeitgeist is people expect a crisp, sharp, almost video game like quality on an 80-foot screen because they can, and they think, oh, that old 24 frames a second is bad. It's like, no, it's not bad. And that's where story to me is key. If we're not doing story first, you've really missed the mark. And this technology is just the delivery device. And so originally we started around campfires, telling stories about events that would happen. And now the stranger would come into our village, and we'd find the best person to help the village relay to that individual the story. And what was fun is we would pick at each other and go, no, that's not the way it was. It's this way. I mean, you've sat around at your family gatherings, and aunt and uncle would help refine the story, but eventually you would let the story, the keeper of the story, the aunt or the grandma or the
Mm-hmm.
uncle or somebody, right? Because they had a rhythm and a meter and a patter, because they could read the room and they could look you in the eye and tell a punchline right at the right moment. But they would be the keeper of those stories. And so all of this technology, it's going to keep changing. Why? Because Sony has to keep selling you stuff. Shure has to keep producing things and sending product out. So
things have been, yeah, but things have been getting less and less expensive.
Sure.
Was maybe 10 years ago, when they start, maybe, well, something like that. They started introducing 4K, and the big studios were at least producing content or producing cameras at $100,000 cameras, and then other companies would come in with a $30,000 4K camera.
Sure.
And now basically we've got 4K and probably soon 8K on our phones.
I challenge you to look up HDR though, because what that is high dynamic range, and that I heard from the colorist that I worked with in Burbank are better pixels, not more pixels. And why better is again, it draws you into the physical reality of what the storytelling is in a two-dimensional medium, which is what we're doing here, versus a live theater. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. I keep interrupting. But either way, but HDR kind of brings you back to that film look as opposed to that video look, because when you point your camera at a bright background, it kind of blows out the background. But with film, you can actually adjust for that.
I'll go one deeper. I think it takes us more back to theater, because it is the closest. It's getting closer to a on stage, real in-person experience that you are involved in whatever entertainment that is happening at you, or experience that is happening at you through your eyes. And so consequently, that you're getting the nuances the technology is now allowing you to perceive. Now, again, we know that what is it, birds and can see many more colors that are in the spectrum that our rods and cones in our head do not allow us to see, but that they are physically out there in the rainbow. So consequently, what the HDR is now doing is allowing us to be delivered better more crayons in the box is how I call it. It's like we were pretty happy with the 4 crayons, and then we got the 12 crayon box, and we're getting closer to the 64 crayon box pretty quick.
So do you think people are more, or do you think they want a more realistic look or a more film look? Because in some cases, I saw some in the early days of a video, they would actually add back the scratches and the dust into a video to give it that film look.
In my career, I have been paid to do both. I have been paid to take scratches, and I've been paid to take out, lint out of, and I would, do a color pass with, oh, I'm shaking the desk, sorry. And paint out those things. And I got paid well in LA and Burbank. And then later on, well, we wanted to feel more authentic, and we were shooting with video. And so we would physically do a scratch pass and overlay, film clutter and stuff. So it's, again, is to your question of film or TV or whatever, it's back to story. What remind me of your question specifically? Because do you remember what you said?
Are people looking for film or for
Oh,
more realistic video?
okay, I'm going to go philosophical on you. Can I do that in a technical talk? I think
Sure.
people are looking for love, and that sounds tacky and cliche and Hallmark. But again, I think people want to connect with other people, and this technology will always change because it is a commodity. So consequently, people want, again, what's the Shakespeare quote? The eyes are the windows to the human soul. So consequently, a story is however it's delivered is from one human to another. Now, if you anthropomorphize something like a Wall-E, the great Disney animation, which, by the way, Pixar, the quote from behind the behind the scenes, or the director's notes during the film, talks about this is the first Pixar film that actually had a live physical human. We didn't know how to do it. So in that movie, they physically filmed the president and put them in the film. They'd never done that before. And so consequently, the other irony was you fell in love with a little robot because it had human qualities. It had emotive heart. And consequently, you weren't looking at a piece of plastic and steel, wrapped together, rolled around. You were looking at and also, again, as was the Lucasfilm famous quote, is audio is 50% of the experience. And so you watch that film, and they understand the tools to help move. I was a part of a community in Portland called the Muse, and Patrick, his quote is to reach the heart to move the mind. And so there's my answer. There's my philosophical answer to your technical question. I think, give it 6 months. The next technology will maybe get in the way and confuse that question.
But I think that also brings us back to our topic of the show, which is digital media marketing.
Sure.
And it's not the product, it's not the service, it's the message, and the connecting with person to person, to actually grow the business and convey your offer and your value.
Do I admit this on the internet? I actually worked a couple of different seasons in the political experience in 2008 and 2010, and I got to work at the highest level of creating political ads, which I would not say is, and it's an honorable profession. The people that are doing it are top professionals in their field, and I respect all of them. The messaging, however, is whatever is coming through the door to help get that individual elected. The irony, of course, is that the consultants that help create those things get paid before the end of the election, because once the election's over, there is no more money. So you're paid cash on the barrel to create a thing, and you're creating a thing in the instance of the moment. And so we had a pipeline that we could do a response ad in conception, original music, filming, editing, original graphics, compression, delivery to multiple channels of network, and this is kind of just pre-internet. This was 08, 2010, something like that, in under 8 hours. Now that meant that pipeline had all of those people sitting in front of each of their specific tools, the video, the audio, the music, the graphics, the compression. We were ready, and we were a pipeline to get a thing through. Now, a film takes what? A couple years from conception to delivery. Television, because it's a much quicker turnaround, is what? Maybe 8 weeks if it's a series. So the question again about marketing is, are you trying to sell something? And if you are, who is your audience and what do you want them to do? Now, the delivery device by which you are telling your story or telling or promoting your product, you need to make sure you understand how your audience is going to be receiving that information. Would you put an entire paragraph on the side of a bus? No, you've got 3 seconds to communicate your message. So you need high contrast, simple words, and understand your audience and how they're going to perceive it. So that YouTube, I love YouTube in the sense that they understand, at least when I was at the YouTube studios in Santa Monica, and out in Playa Del Mar, down there. Anyway, beautiful studio, which is now closed, but that's a different conversation. One of the head of the departments, when they were first starting out opening these studios up several years ago, they said, look, you're coming here. We're going to teach you what we know, but we do not have the secret sauce. What we have are the analytics. We can tell you what happened. So we're going to give you some more tools that you don't have access to. They were giving you full access. I mean, if you had 2,000 viewers in those days, you had a full access to red cameras and lighting grids and even potential staff that actually knew how to use it versus just your friends with iPhones were barely the thing at the time. And you could create content because that's what YouTube needed at the time. But more importantly, what YouTube was getting was, we as their product, again, understand that you and I are Google's product because they are selling advertising to us depending on what we buy or what we don't buy. And they want to say, hey, product person, you want to sell this to this person? We know who that is because they bought this thing in the past. And so to market something to a specific person, heard a great phrase recently. I'll credit Chris Fenwick with affinity groups, people that have interests in similar things, and so that's for a digital marketing. Well, it's marketing, and now we're currently in the digital delivery format. That's a long answer to your question. That was a long time ago. Sorry.
Yep, and again, I think it's because. It's more than, I think the key to that question, or that answer, was the messaging, the quick turnaround time, the fact that you're using professionals, which will shorten the turnaround time. But everybody these days, I was actually meeting with a client yesterday, and they're in the, I guess I can say, the pharmaceutical industry.
Sure.
And
lots of money there. Holy moly, so much money.
One of the people there was put in charge of shooting and editing this video for compliance. And they had no background in shooting, no background in editing.
But they had an
They
iPhone.
didn't know but they had an iPhone. Actually, I think they GoPros, and
Oh, I'm so sorry.
they had a need. And once
Sure.
they started trying to edit the film or the videos, they discovered this is not why we're here. We're here for the company, and we're not here for the editing. And so they gave us a call, and which now enables them to go back to what they are good at. But a lot of times, if you don't have the backing of a big company, you've got to do it yourself. And
the
people are
tools are now
teaching
available.
themselves.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are. The misnomer, and this is where I'm seeking to be so gentle, because I know a lot about a lot of things, but I don't know so much about so many other things. And that's why I'm interested in people, because you have experience, Bruce, that you brought you and I created a relationship. You were able to meet a need that I happened to have that in that moment. And we continue to be, in relationship with each other as acquaintances, as friends, as professional colleagues, to share, hey, did you hear about this thing? How is this thing helpful to me? Could be possibly useful for your need. And so to work
Mhm.
backwards from the need is what I learned in 10 years ago. After the earthquake in Port-au-Prince, we did a study, and it's the book is called When Helping Hurts. It's very dogmatic. I'll say that straight up front. It's got a certain belief system that many will not agree with, but the concept really flipped my script in my head of trying to go in and save the day, because I am a human of a certain age, of a certain culture, of a certain time in history. And that was my job, was to be philanthropic and go help people, because that's what you're supposed to do. And this book kind of threw a grenade into that attitude, because it said, coming with a box of Band-Aids is not going to help. Now, it may make you feel better, but it's not solving the problem. In fact, if anything, it may be hindering a positive forward-moving solution. And consequently, to ask your question about what is the need, and yeah, I think there is an opportunity of using digital marketing to help solve those other problems, to the point that even the industry is realizing people haven't been watching broadcast for a decade and a half now. And
Mhm.
consequently, that whole juggernaut of inertia is starting to realize we have to figure out how to be relevant. And so they're starting to realize that, yeah, stories kind of key, to the point that just the other day I heard Gillette made a documentary series that was produced and put on Netflix. Now, think about Netflix. The quote was, Netflix, the anti-ad. You do not see product placement inside of a Netflix experience. And so for Gillette to be given an award for a documentary series that was distributed on Netflix, that's making all of the broadcast channels go, how do we do that? Our whole business model is, promote insurance and promote different what are the three things that I love, these cable magazines that tell you the ad dollars that are spent per month, where and why.
Yep. And again, I think the part about creating content of value rather than a sales message, something like this, where the message is subtle, like "come hire me" or "come hire you," or "watch Man in the Kitchen," without
Yes,
being
please.
hitting people over
This
the head with it.
this Saturday at 5:00.
And we'll put the link in the show notes. Actually,
Okay.
we'll put a link at the end of the show for you can click on that as well.
Ah, thank you.
So actually, we're almost out of time. Actually, but
Now,
you
I
did
realized
mention.
okay, technologically, I would love a studio, but we are physically, and again, are you kidding me that we can do this? I'm physically in my bedroom. I'm physically with a Lazarite, backdrop and a beautiful mic, and I'm plugged into my laptop here, and I'm connected to the internet, and you and I are chatting. This is what used to cost tens of thousands of dollars. And now, yes, it still is not free. That's the misnomer again. It's not free. That's the advertising talking to you, because all of it, there's a subscription here, and there's a knowledge there, and a piece of equipment, with the right little gizmo to plug in at the right place. So none of it is free, but by comparison to what it used to cost, the opportunities are amazing right now. So totally agree with you.
So we really hadn't talked that much about Man in the Kitchen.
We got 3 minutes. We can talk a lot about it.
Graham Kerr.
Why do you have that book?
So this is an exciting book that back in October, I think when we first got together and we started talking about Man in the Kitchen, it was about the same time that you were working with your daughter, was doing a live show with Graham Kerr as well.
Yeah.
Who's also known as the Galloping Gourmet.
Yes, thank you.
Who is no longer galloping, but he's on a new path.
He's 87. He's still lots of energy.
Yeah. So he's on a new path, and you're working on a documentary about his life. And how is that coming along? And how is that
Galloping Upstream? We captured Graham when he was 85 in a stunning backdrop called the Skagit Valley, north of Seattle. It's kind of a magical arboretum of grasses and dirt and Puget Sound and salmon and mountains, and so this is where Graham lives up there, and we filmed him for the summer of the stories of his life. He wrote an autobiography called Flash of Silver, which I own the rights to tell the film story. It was a film version of it. And so we spent a summer, we spent about a year with him, and just had him tell his anecdotal stories of what it was like growing up in England, moving to Australia, originally New Zealand, actually, then to Australia, then to Canada, and then just the ups and downs of living in a hotel as a young boy, learning to love food, and then at the advent of television, becoming a personality that ended up going global to a point where he was at one point on 200,000 television sets. And that, even to this day, is a huge, huge feat, even for a YouTuber. So that he did 460 Galloping Gourmet shows, each of which took 19 hours to create in 3 years. It's just a lot of Herculean efforts that he and his wife, who was his producer of his career of 1,800 television experiences. It's just, he's fascinating. So that's Graham Kerr.
Was that he wasn't devoting all 19 hours, because that time was in production, post-production as well. Is that correct?
No. That's
time invested.
That's his time invested in making, because of the 460 plus shows that were the Galloping Gourmet, they only re-recorded 3 shows. They were all live, and what you saw was what you got, because that was the spontaneity of who Graham Kerr is the magic. And that's the translation that I'm taking into my new experience with Madeline Smithberg. Is her spontaneity is the diamond. She is our diamond that sparkles and shines when put in a creative environment with a loving audience. And so that's my job, is to get all of this technology out of the way and connect and create what we've just pivoted in the 8 weeks of this season 1 of Mad in the Kitchen Live, is a round table experience where a guest chef will come in, and Madeline, as the host, will help all of us learn together. And what's really amazing, because of this new digital format, we can now all be in the same room, just happen to be in different parts of the world. When we had South Africa and London and Seattle and Manila all in the same room at the same time, all cooking together. When other time in history have you been able to do something like that? So it's been a lot of fun.
Yep. So this is kind of the layout of your show.
There you go.
And you have a live chat going on at the same time, which she can sometimes follow and sometimes hard to follow.
This is Marisa. She is our audience engagement advocate. So she's reading all of those, because imagine, for instance, last week we were cooking and frying in a pot of boiling peanut oil. And this is one of our Zoom chefs that joined in. And then these are our home chefs across the bottom. And they're all, let's call it a roundtable interactive. And it was the day before Mother's Day. So we were all very excited about cooking before Mother's Day. And there's Happy Mother's Day. That particular, again, that side camera is, again, one of those relational experiences that physically showed up and is completely out of our budget. But we were gifted with an amazing talent, Guy Cochran, and he had the ability to bring that. And that consequently allowed the two people in the bottom, Bobby and John. John originally started on Office Hours, geeking out, and then all of a sudden this cooking opportunity came along. And to see people joining together and to be a part of watching others connect with their own family members, and now with people from around the world, I feel very successful. Now, economics, we'll figure that. We're figuring that one out.
Right. And again, this is something that is new. Something that Zoom has enabled.
It's three shows at once, and this is again is, you think about some of these live shows on broadcast television, and they've got the interactivity of like tweet this, hashtag this number now, vote this thing up with your phone. And that's a connectivity through the AT&T or T-Mobile or something like that. What we are doing in the same moment, I don't think has ever been done, because we are physically broadcasting live to YouTube a show. Simultaneously, we are interacting with guests from around the world. And again, we're not sending out production crews. They are sending us their images with whatever mobile devices or video and audio device, which we do prep, we do rehearse. Oh yeah, we rehearse. Nothing's an accident. Don't think reality TV is not rehearsed. I've worked in that industry. Please do not put those two words together. Scripted reality, maybe. But the third component is we have a Zoom room of people almost, chatting behind the scenes, watching it almost like a Mystery Science Theater 2000. And so we've got kind of three audiences. I said, that's why I call this the beta. Who's doing this kind of stuff and not dying?
Yep. And it's live.
That's the beauty of it. See, that's the spontaneity of again, going backwards from the Graham Kerr experience and what I learned from that experience. And yes, that is a documentary feature film. We don't have it finished. We've got 32 hours of content of Graham interviews. We've got thousands of photos. We've got Emeril Lagasse. We've got Rachel Ray. We've got the guy that took the photos from the Life magazine. We've got Madeline Smithberg, who brought Graham Kerr into the David Letterman show. So we've got some amazing anecdotes and stories and fascinating, but it all has to be edited down. And that's where we're at with the Galloping Upstream film. But in the meantime, yes, the Mad in the Kitchen Live is a whole new adventure. And again, we are in season 1. We're in the middle of season 1. So that means there will be a season 2.
Excellent. Well, I'll put also a link. I was about to show that the teaser link to the Graham Kerr, but we can also put that in show notes as well.
Okay.
Well, because we've gone 44 minutes. It is a wonderful interview, wonderful conversation.
Oh,
Great. Thank you for being here. I know you have other things to do, and especially gearing up for your show this weekend at 5
we
p.m.
are
Pacific.
on
Need
YouTube.
to keep
And
that in mind because we are across different time zones.
and what's fun is what we have done and offer are cooking experiences, which we have done at the executive level. And one of our most gratifying was with over 100 teachers from across the entire United States of the NEA. And we created a cook-along experience, again, on Zoom. And we would send out the recipe. We would all meet at a certain time on Zoom, and we would all cook together. And that's magical. And that's kind of a private performance, not a performance, but that's more of a private connection time. And we do offer that as a service, as we talked about. And the production values aren't as high with regards to the graphics and the music and all that, but the engagement is what's critical in the Zoom experience there. And that's what you and I are doing. We're being engaged, and hopefully our audience,
Yep.
that your audience is engaging with you. Hopefully I didn't bore them. Hopefully. Sorry.
Yep. So I'm pulling this
Galloping upstream. There's Madeline. And there's Graham.
So it's an interesting story. I remember watching Galloping Gourmet growing up as well. And this is probably a whole nother different conversation. We can just sit down and talk about the making of a documentary.
Which is completely different than a narrative, because you are discovering what the story is as you're filming it versus writing the story and then going and trying to film it. That's a narrative. And a documentary is you're capturing what is the story and then finding how do you fit all of that into 90 minutes, because that's all the more people want to give you. But even that has changed now because we're not in theaters like we used to be.
I hit a button too soon.
We're at the end of the show. Okay, the zeitgeist is at the end.
I was actually just queuing it up. And
your audio is breaking up. Is that me or you?
It's going to be me. So here is a quick pitch. Follow us on YouTube. Please subscribe. And I will put all the links in the show notes, both on Facebook and on YouTube. And if you want to look more into creating your own live stream show, because it always helps to have a person behind the scenes pushing the buttons and pulling the levers than trying to do 100% yourself.
Your audio is really breaking up for me. Do you want to recharge something and recut that if you're going to recut this in? I don't, because
no, it's live.
It's live. Okay.
It's live. So great. Thank you much. I guess we will end the show. You've been a fantastic guest, and I look forward to talking with you again.
You're a friend. Appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you, Bruce.
Bye.
Bye.